what you'll see behind me and in front of me is where I am at in the project. So behind me, there was originally a front door here. We removed the front door. The front door was actually over to my left and replaced it with this new door here. Additionally, last summer we put in the patio that you see me standing on. We also dug 2 7-foot holes and sunk something called a sonotube. And a sonotube is just simply a round, long, looks like a large toilet paper roll that you put in the ground and then fill with concrete. On top of that sonotube, you'll see here that we actually recycled some of the rock that was originally cladding our home, and my wife is the one that actually did the masonry work on this. And we got to the point where we were actually going to put the caps on, and it got too cold to pour concrete. Now behind me, you will see there's a post here to my left and a post here to my right. These are just tacked onto the walls, and this is where the timber frame is going to go. Right here, there'll be an 8x8 post coming up. About right here, there will be, a little higher. This is where the large beam will go. And if you look here, right here is where the scissor truss is going to go. So what I've done is actually gone on SketchUp, and I've created a little bit of a three-dimensional model of what the finished product will look like. Now, the truss system that's in here right now is not exactly the same, but the pieces that you've seen me working on are actually this piece right here, which is the post, and there's a tenon on the end of that. This piece right here, which is the brace, and you can see that the really heavy beam that I was working on is this beam right here. So I received a question from Colton, and Colton asked, when I'm chopping out a mortise, after I've drilled the holes, what chisel do I generally start with? And really, it depends on the user, but personally, what I like to do is go through with a knife first, or the edge of the chisel. I like to score all the way around the mortise. And then I begin the chopping process. Now, usually I'll start with a smaller chisel, and then the last bit of work that I'll do is I usually do with my 2-inch chisel. My mortises are 2 inches, so the exact width of this chisel is exactly the same as the width of my mortise. I find that if I'm hogging out waste, this has a little bit more maneuverability, and it's a bit easier for me to remove some of the scrap with this as opposed to this. But both of these suffice. So I received a question from Trent, and Trent asked, what type of wood am I using and why? If you look throughout the countryside in Wisconsin, especially in old barns, you will see that timber frames have been cut out of all different types of species of wood, from pine to spruce to things like cherry, things like oak. If I was working with a species of oak, for example, you would see that my joinery is way more difficult to execute because of the density of the wood, and I'm also planning on installing this by myself. So pine in this case is a dream to work with. Historically, if you go over to places like England, or if you go over to places like Germany, some of the European countries, a lot of the frames are actually cut out of oak. The next question is actually intended for Jeff. Jeff asked, why are these timbers that I am using not exactly perfectly square or straight? The timbers that you're looking at behind me were sawn on a bandsaw mill similar to the one that I have at the school. The issue with the bandsaw mill and the issue with large timber is, as you guys have learned, wood expands and contracts, and it expands and contracts based off of moisture. Now, these beams are incredibly large, and you guys can see that this dimension right here is 12, this dimension right here is 8 inches. You can see some checking on the end, etc., which means that this timber is actually going to expand and contract considerably faster than, say, a smaller piece of stock, which this is a piece of hardwood flooring that I have right here. Additionally, the blade might be dull, the log could shift, or simply the wood could shrink as it's seasoning. And I, as a woodworker, need to take those discrepancies into mind when I do my layout. Question is for Levi. Levi asked what type of bit and why. The type of bit that I like to use is a spade bit. reason I'm using a spade bit, honestly, it's one of the few bits that I have in my garage that's the right size, and I don't want to go to the hardware store. A second reason I like to use a spade bit, it is relatively aggressive. Clears out a lot of wood chips really fast, as opposed to a twist bit or a Forster's bit. This long point on the end here also helps me guide where I am drilling. Oh, hello there. Welcome to my uninsulated garage, Congress Clan, Congress Cult, COVID-19 woodshop. Wait, what should I actually call this thing? I don't know. You guys are the experts. Can you help me on that? Thank you. As a woodworker, I need to take those variations into account when I'm framing.